ってきた。危ない。
Hello, Prater. I want to tell you something that happened to me on December 30th, 2023. Maybe it's not exactly a horror story, but it was something very mysterious, without any explanation, and more than anything, it was what happened after that brief incident on the highway that truly terrified me. Please keep this anonymous, because it really scared me, but I don't want it to happen to other people. I'm a truck driver, and that night I was traveling from Sacramento, California, to Denver, Colorado. It was my last trip before spending New Year's Eve with my family, as I had already been working for 3 weeks. That's the way my job works: 3 weeks driving, then 1 week at home with my family. The plan was to reach Salt Lake City to rest for the night, then leave early for Denver to deliver the load, and finally head home to Greeley, Colorado. I was driving on Interstate 80, passing through California and Nevada, and everything was normal. But upon entering the state of Utah, around 11 p.m., I saw 3 lights in the sky, similar to what many people claim to see online. I stopped, recorded them with my phone, and then sent the video to my wife, who began joking that they were aliens. The strange thing was that where I stopped, it was just me and another car on the opposite side of the highway, which also pulled over to watch the lights. I tried to take some photos, but I didn't have time. The lights lasted only about 40 seconds, which was the length of my video. Seeing that was impressive for me, but I thought it would just be an interesting story to tell. However, what happened afterward is what has left me paranoid ever since. I arrived in Salt Lake, slept for 7 hours, then continued toward Denver because I didn't want to get home too late. Finally, around 4 p.m., I reached Denver, where I just had to drop off the trailer before heading home. After 5 p.m., I finally arrived, where my family was waiting for me with food and a celebration. I spent a couple of peaceful hours with them until around 8:30 p.m. While we were having dinner, the doorbell rang. My 18-year-old daughter answered and came back saying there were some very formally dressed men asking for me. I went to the door and found 2 men in suits who, without even introducing themselves, told me to come with them to their vehicle because they needed to talk seriously with me. They said to bring my phone immediately because it was a matter of great importance. I was completely confused as to who they were, but their appearance intimidated me. I had no idea if they meant to harm me or my family. They didn't have friendly expressions, quite the opposite, they looked serious and menacing. They took me to a black SUV, where another man of the same appearance was waiting, seemingly the one in charge. With the same cold and curt tone, he said, "Delete the video you took on Interstate 80. Now delete the copy you sent to your wife, if you truly love your family." I snapped back, asking what kind of joke this was, and he replied, "You drive a truck." Then he said the name of the company I work for, the names of my family members, their ages, and other private information I didn't think anyone could know. He said this visit was personal and that he didn't plan on coming back to have another peaceful conversation. I went back inside very confused and afraid. I quietly pulled my wife aside, away from our kids and relatives, and told her what had just happened. She was shocked too, and without a second thought, we deleted the video from her phone. The next morning, my wife went out to collect a package from the mailbox and saw 2 local police patrol cars. I was busy inside when she came back, upset, saying the police had just spoken to her. I tried to calm her and asked what they had said. She replied, "They told me they already knew we deleted the video, and that for our own good, we shouldn't tell anyone about it." Since then, I felt paranoid, like living in a nightmare, not knowing if they're still watching me or if they might harm me or my family. I decided to write this to you, but please keep it anonymous. I just don't want this to happen to anyone else. And without a doubt, I'm left with a deep impression of how much control the high powers in this country have over us, people we don't even know. Let's continue. Hello, Prater. My name is Grace Collins, and I'm originally from New Mexico. I've been a truck driver since I was very young, and to this day it's still my profession. I'm currently 53 years old, so I've dedicated my entire life to this work. For a large part of my journeys, my father-in-law used to accompany me. He was also in the same line of work and often said he missed being out on the highways in his truck. So, whenever I had delivery trips, I would invite him, and he gladly accepted. This made my trips much more enjoyable because I had someone to talk to. For many years, the two of us traveled countless roads across Mexico together, sharing many experiences, both good and bad. One day, however, my father-in-law passed away from an illness. It was something that hurt me deeply, both for my wife and for myself, because I saw him as a second father. After it happened, I took a few weeks off to be with my wife and children. But eventually, I had to return to work, as the money was necessary. I still remember that first night back on the road after his passing. It felt so strange to be driving without my father-in-law beside me, talking to me. But then, all of a sudden, I began to feel as if someone was riding with me. I don't quite know how to explain it, but it was the sensation that you're not alone, that there's a presence right there with you. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, since my father-in-law's death was still very recent. But it was a feeling I had never experienced before. Around 1 o'clock in the morning, I stopped at a rest area I always used when driving that route. There were always good colleagues and friends there, and it was a safe place to rest. I felt I needed a break, so I didn't hesitate to park. The first thing I did when I arrived was head straight to the restroom, as I'd been holding it for a while. I quickly greeted a few friends I knew and went inside. When I came out, I saw a colleague, someone I hadn't seen in a long time, walking in. As soon as he saw me, he headed straight over to greet me and give me a hug. I greeted him warmly with a big smile because it had been so long since we'd seen each other. But my smile faded when he said, "I already knew you were here. I saw your father-in-law in your truck. That's why I came in quickly to say hello. But I'm in a hurry and need to go." I froze. "My father-in-law?" I asked with a trembling voice. "Yes," I greeted him, "but I don't think he saw me," he replied. I quickly told him what had happened, that my father-in-law had passed away, so what he saw was impossible. He just stared at me, then gave a nervous laugh and asked if I was joking. "No, I swear it's true. I only just got back to work because I took a few weeks off with my wife," I replied. He hugged me and said how sorry he was, but insisted that what he saw was real, that my father-in-law was sitting in the passenger seat of my truck, and when my friend saw him, he greeted him with a big smile as always, since they knew each other through me. In the end, I believed him, because he had no reason to lie to me. We said goodbye because he had to leave, but my plans to rest there were ruined. How could I sleep in the cab knowing my father-in-law was there? I bought a coffee and decided to keep driving, but now I knew the presence I'd been feeling was real. Even though I loved my father-in-law very much, it wasn't a comforting thought to know he was still there. It gave me fear and chills. But a few hours later, something happened that completely changed my way of thinking, something so powerful and 100% real that it still amazes me to this day. Around 4 o'clock that same morning, I was still driving, but I was extremely tired. I still had 2 more hours before reaching my destination. I had finished my coffee, and even blasting music at full volume wasn't keeping me awake. At one point, I think I dozed off, when suddenly, something or someone shook me so hard that I woke up just in time to avoid a head-on collision with a bus. That truly happened. I felt someone grab my shoulders and shake me so strongly that, after swerving to avoid the bus, I looked all around me because it felt so real. I thought someone was actually there with me. I was so shocked that I immediately called my wife to tell her. Of course, her first reaction was fear and asking if I was okay. I reassured her that I was, but told her I was certain it had been her father who saved my life. She started crying along with me and stayed on the phone with me until I finally arrived at my destination. After that, I took a long nap so I could drive home rested and not risk falling asleep again. During the whole return trip, I still felt that same presence with me. But when I got home, my wife told me that, although she loved her father very much, she wanted him to rest in peace. I agreed, so we called a priest to pray and bless the truck so my father-in-law could find his way. After that, I never again felt the sensation of someone riding with me, and nothing paranormal happened again. As unbelievable as this might sound, it really happened. And while I personally stopped being afraid, I know this story will still give many people chills. But I will always remember what my father-in-law did for me, even after passing away. Good evening, everyone. First of all, I hope you are doing well and having a good start to the year. My name is Jack Turner, but for safety reasons, I won't share my last name. Even so, I would like to share with you one of the worst experiences of my entire working life. You see, my father was a truck driver all his life. As I grew up, he often took me on many of his trips and taught me how to drive trucks. I grew to love the job and decided to dedicate myself to it as well. I started working at 18 in this noble profession. But when the wave of uncontrolled crime began in northern Mexico, circumstances forced me to quit as I was exposing myself to too much danger. This story happened during my last year as a truck driver. I was driving my truck along a highway in northern Tamaulipas, heading toward Nuevo Leon. I left very early, around 4 in the morning, because I had several deliveries to make that same day. About 30 minutes into the trip, armored trucks blocked my way and forced me to stop. A criminal group, under threat, made me get out of my truck and drove off with it, leaving me alone in the middle of the dark highway. I didn't resist. Those who live here know how things work. Your physical safety comes first. Eventually, a fellow trucker passed by around 6 a.m. and gave me a ride back to the city. I went straight to the company to explain what had happened. In such cases, there wasn't much to be done, and they didn't penalize me or make me pay for the lost cargo. My only concern was recovering my truck, my only tool for work. A few days later, I contacted a friend who worked for the ministerial police. I told him my situation, and he promised to help me. He had access to the yard where abandoned trucks, buses, and cars, often stolen and used for crimes, were taken. One day, he called me saying he had found my truck, though it was in terrible condition. I went immediately to retrieve it. I didn't care about the damage, I just wanted it back so I could work again. When I opened the cargo box, a nauseating, unbearable smell hit me. There were bloodstains, and it was obvious what it had been used for. Even so, I took it, had it thoroughly cleaned, repaired what was broken, and within a week, it was ready to use. A few days later, I went back to work. My wife, who is very superstitious, didn't want me to drive that truck again. She said it was cursed. And she was right. While driving at night toward San Luis Potosi, I suddenly heard noises from the back of the truck. I turned down the music and clearly heard the sound of people crying, painful, mournful wails. I knew no one was back there. The box only contained construction materials. The sound sent chills through me. I turned the music up to avoid hearing it and sang loudly, trying to calm myself until I reached a 24-hour gas station with a small restaurant. I parked, opened the cargo doors, and saw nothing. There wasn't even space for a person to hide, as the box was full. The cries had stopped. I went inside to buy a coffee, deciding to drink it there. While I was sitting, an elderly couple entered and asked whose blue truck was outside. I said it was mine, and they told me they had heard loud banging coming from the cargo box, as if several people were pounding from inside. I went out with them and opened the doors again. Nothing, just my cargo. The couple looked shaken, insisting they had clearly heard it. I reassured them, though inside I was terrified. I knew exactly what was happening. I left with a growing sense of fear. As the night went on, the atmosphere became heavier, and I felt an unshakable anxiety. I blasted the radio but still felt uneasy. In the morning, I delivered the load but didn't dare sleep in the cab. I drove home early to avoid another long night on the road. After that trip, I never used that truck again. My wife was right, there were trapped souls in it who had died violently. Later, when I told my friend from the ministerial police about my experience, he revealed something he had kept from me. They had found my truck abandoned in the middle of the wilderness with several bodies piled inside, in horrifying condition. I immediately sold the truck to a colleague. He knew the story but still bought it for a much lower price. Sometime later, I bought a new truck, but that same year I decided to retire from the job. It was no longer safe. That's my story. Good evening, Prater. This is the first time I'm sharing one of my experiences as a truck driver in Canada, so I hope you like it. Believe me, it's almost a miracle that I'm here to tell you my story. My name is Henry Scott, and I'm England, but over 5 years ago I emigrated to Canada in search of a better life for my family. I had a good friend who was already working in this country as a trucker, so he helped me get a job at the same company. I must say it's a very risky job. Compared to other truck drivers around the world, we have to cross several routes that are actually frozen lakes. We must maintain a certain speed and never stop, because if we do, the weight of the truck can break the ice. Even so, I accepted the job because it's very well paid for the risk involved. Besides the freezing temperatures, we have to drive through snow-covered forests, and at night the sight is overwhelming. There's a lot of fog and almost no other vehicles pass through. Now that you have the context, I'll tell you about the chilling experience I lived through 2 years ago. I had to deliver food to some nearby towns in my truck. Since there were few people working, I had to make 2 trips with a full load. On the second trip, it got dark. I was already nervous because, even with experience, I had rarely driven at night in such conditions. The night was icy, the fog was thick, and everything was covered in white. For many, it might seem beautiful, but believe me, when you're there alone at night, all you think about is getting out as quickly as possible. I was driving slowly when I suddenly saw something that froze me in place. A few meters ahead, between the trees, stood a figure. It was shaped like a human but far too tall, easily over 3 meters. I began to slow down, unsure how to react. I couldn't see the creature's face clearly because of the fog, but I was almost certain it wasn't an animal. Its appearance was humanoid. I stopped the truck completely because I didn't want to pass by where that strange creature was. The fear I felt was indescribable, and the vulnerability of that moment is something I wouldn't wish on anyone. But stopping only made things worse. The truck got stuck. I called my company, and they told me they'd send help, though it would take some time due to the weather. I didn't mention what I had seen. I just stayed inside the truck, waiting. The creature had disappeared, which made me even more paranoid. I felt it could come out from anywhere at any moment. After a long wait, help finally arrived, and we left immediately. I was frozen to the bone and couldn't stop thinking about the creature, but I said nothing to my colleagues. It sounded too unbelievable, and I didn't want to be mocked. The only person I told was my wife. A few days later, I had to take the same route again, but this time they gave me a different truck. I made sure not to let night catch me in those woods again. I still felt fear, but I was more at ease because a colleague was driving ahead of me in his own truck, so I wouldn't be alone on that foggy road. We were about halfway when my colleague began to slow down until he came to a complete stop, without turning off his truck. I asked over the radio if something had happened, and he asked me if I had seen something large moving among the trees. He thought it was an animal, but said its size was far too big. I hadn't seen anything just then, but I knew exactly what he was talking about. I didn't tell him, I just said I hadn't seen it and suggested we keep moving. We delivered the goods to the towns and stopped for coffee before heading back. That's when he told me, "You're going to think I'm crazy, but I swear I saw something huge walking among the trees." When I looked directly at it, it hid. I couldn't hold it in anymore and told him what had happened to me that night. He said I should have told him sooner, he would have believed me. He explained that there was a local legend about a giant creature living in those snowy forests, responsible for several disappearances of locals and even tourists who went climbing in the mountains. I had no idea there had been so many disappearances in that area, but now it made sense to me. On our way back, my colleague suddenly braked again. My heart pounded, thinking he had seen it again. Then I heard his voice on the radio telling me to get out of my truck, without turning it off. I saw him get out and walk in front of his truck. It was still daylight, which is the only reason I dared to get out, though I was terrified. He silently pointed to the snow-covered ground. There was a footprint, not from an animal or a normal person, but a human-like footprint, bare, measuring half a meter in length. My colleague quickly took photos, but I ran back to my truck, yelling for him to get back inside. We were in danger without protection. We left immediately. When we got to the company, my colleague proudly showed the picture to the other employees, causing a stir. Our boss found out and called us in. We told him everything, and my colleague showed him the photos. But our boss ordered him to delete them in front of him, leaving us with no evidence. We didn't understand why he asked that, but he only said not to talk about it again or our jobs would be at risk. Clearly, he knew something and didn't want fear to spread among the staff. Sometime later, I changed to a less dangerous job in another city, never returning to that immense, frozen forest. But I still carry the disturbing memory. If you think about it, it's not so far-fetched that unknown creatures could exist in such vast, unexplored forests. In conclusion, nature deserves our deepest respect. There are many roads that should never be traveled because of sinister circumstances. Some people take shortcuts to reach their destination faster, but sometimes crossing those routes can leave you with a terrifying experience that marks you for life, just like the trucker in the next story.